What's going on, guys? TG or Thunder God here, and today I have with me special guest Gian. Introduce yourself. I just did it for you, but do it anyway.
What's up? Chilling.
Yes, and today we're going to be talking about Kabuto versus Zabuza. Now, I chose Gian specifically because he's been kind of running this topic, or like characters within this topic, for a little bit now. So he kind of knows like the ins and outs of this argument. So I kind of figured, let's get him on here. Let's see what he has to say. Let's kind of talk about it, get the standpoint on like Kabuto versus Zabuza, like who really wins, and just kind of like figure out the ins and outs. Because I want the best content. So with that being said, definitely hit a like, hit subscribe, and then go on to his channel down below and hit subscribe. He's going to be posting more. And yeah, I'm going to put you on blast. Go to his channel and be upset at him if he doesn't post more, basically. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. So starting off this video, or these characters more so, a big part of them is just scaling them off Kakashi. So the best way to kind of talk about this is first we'll just talk about the fights with these characters, and then kind of talk about like the narrative, consistencies, like what happens in between fights, what's going on, etc, etc. So we'll get started. So starting off, we have Kakashi versus Zabuza. They have 2 rounds. Now what's interesting is that this is actually a weakened Kakashi that like kind of takes on Zabuza. It's kind of talked about that he's a bit rusty, and even after the fact, he begins training a little bit after this fight. Do you wanna mention that real quick? Talk about like
yeah. So like literally like right after this fight with Zabuza, he like goes out to mountains, and he mentioned that he needs to like retrain his body since he was letting it get a little bit weak from not fighting in a while. And then like moving on throughout part 1, he actually gets like caught in Orochimaru's genjutsu, and he stated in the data book that he like thinks he needs greater strength. He's like yearns for it, so he starts retraining his body, training even more, like reaching new heights basically with his strength.
Yes, excellent point. And basically what we're getting at with this is that the Kakashi that actually fights Zabuza in part 1 is the weakest Kakashi in part 1. He actually grows in strength throughout part 1, so this would not be indicative of his later abilities shown in part 1, and we'll kind of outline that a little bit more. So essentially he goes toe-to-toe with Zabuza round 1, in which, he doesn't even use all of his abilities really, as you kind of get the sense for this, as he uses Raikiri right after in their second confrontation. A lot of people will try and bring up the fact that Zabuza was actually not fully recovered in his second confrontation with Kakashi. This is kind of an iffy point because it's not really, you can't really quantify it. And it's like pretty much he would need how's a good way of putting it? A great percentage of his actual power to actually return to battle. So it'd have to be very close to his actual strength, not just, like a 25% less if he actually thought he was going to go back and fight Kakashi. So he actually would be very close to his actual strength. So just to kind of point on that like statement, because like a lot of people bring up, I'm sure you agree, like people try and like play around that point in terms of like Zabuza not being fully recovered to like kind of downgrade characters. Yeah.
So what we know from this, it's kind of like implied by Haku that when Haku throws the needles into his body, you're not at full strength yet. But Zabuza, like right in that moment, he like uses his demon mist. He's angry, and he's like basically just right ready to fire up again. And I think that just his emotions and his showings from this, it's really hard to assert the fact that this Zabuza is really any weaker.
Agreed.
Really any weaker than the version that fights him in the first part. So I think that that's where I stand on that.
You could even somewhat imply, I don't want to say he got stronger, because obviously he didn't, but he's almost like more motivated, and he almost shows more of his power, like with the demon mist, and he's like kind of, he has better strategy. So it's like would be even more prepped Zabuza, which just still loses to this Kakashi all out. So it just should be pretty clear at this point that Zabuza doesn't really stack up against Kakashi in all of his abilities. Just kind of showing, even in the fact with the demon mist, like pretty much Kakashi was able to pretty much formulate a plan, see through it, with his, summon of dogs and Raikiri, which would have killed Zabuza at that point if Haku didn't intervene. So it should be pretty clear at this point that Zabuza is actually not quite at the level of full power Kakashi, including Raikiri, which, would be his complete arsenal. And moving from this fight, as Gian talked about, Kakashi actually begins training. You can see with the rock climbing incident, he's actually training to get stronger, in which case he actually encounters Orochimaru. You know, you talked about it, in which he also like yearns for greater strength after the encounter. But actually after in the medical room when he's with Sasuke, he actually encounters Kabuto, in which he actually describes Kabuto to be kind of threatening. Do you want to add on to this a little bit, like kind of Kakashi's stance on Kabuto?
Yeah, so like Kakashi's like there, and he basically sees Kabuto, and Kabuto is like right from the get-go trying to escape, and Kakashi's like oh shit, I can't let this guy escape or else he's like dangerous, he's a threat. And what Kabuto does, he like outsmarts him by using a transformation jutsu and jumps out the window, and Kakashi's like oh shit, this dude's good, you know. I think that this is like a good intelligence feat to display for Kabuto, getting onto like the hack side of it, so he could basically perform the same feat Kakashi did in order to beat Zabuza with the Demon Mist, or just the hit and miss in general.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because you essentially have Kakashi, just barring like a stronger Kakashi, you also have Kakashi actually outplaying. I use outplaying, but I guess outsmarting is more of a proper term. Zabuza for every sense in the word, and what I'm saying is that he's actually able to like work around the Demon Mist, which Zabuza was pretty much confident like Kakashi wouldn't be able to counter, and you never really see him struggling intellectually with any of Zabuza's strategies. Whereas with Kabuto, he pretty much just gets outplayed in this scenario. It's like, it's pretty blatant. He's like, he didn't even want Kabuto to run away. He's almost a little upset that Kabuto got out. He's like, you smart Alec Brad, and then he jumps out the window. So it's pretty clear that Kabuto actually has insane intelligence at this point. And this is further backed up, as Gian brought it to my attention. Kabuto's actually able to like analyze the jutsu and the strength of people as soon as he meets them. So he actually has like a keen eye for identifying how he stacks up against certain people, or how far like their abilities can go just off viewing them. But going past this, we actually have well, actually, do you want to, before that, let's talk about Kakashi's growth, because that's a big point. I think a lot of people, we need to talk about this. And Gian actually has a really interesting way of pointing out Kakashi's growth, so I'll let you take the stand on this one.
Yeah, so like starting with part 1 knowledge, we know that like the data books, multiple data books, like Haku's described and gives quantification for Haku's speed at around the speed of light. You know, this stays consistent the rest of part 1, as we see Kakashi getting blitzed by this attack. Like Haku uses another mirror and jumps in front of Kakashi, and Kakashi doesn't even perceive the fact Haku did such. And then basically what happens is that Kakashi does all this training, he retrains his agility, he gets faster, and then we see another example of the speed of light in part 1, this being Itachi's Water Fang Jutsu. And this is also described as the speed of light, and basically Kakashi like point blank reacts to it. So this is like a prime example of Kakashi getting faster throughout part 1, and I think that just with the knowledge we have in part 1, it's like very consistent that this is the case.
Yes, and let's say, for example, right, let's say you're not a fan of the data books, because I know there's like a bunch of people who are like data books, and then like even more specifically like the Water Fang, right? They're not too keen on this, right? You could even infer, right, Kakashi training up, he's actually training up his stamina, and we actually do know stamina is actually a big part of just developing your chakra, and pretty much like working towards like increasing your, like, let's say speed, agility, like the output, the potency of your jutsu. So you could even infer just him simply training would at least get him back to a more prime state, or buff his stamina, in which case it would just be as pretty much safe to infer he got much stronger from this, because he's training to get stronger. So there's even if you don't like data book statement, it's very consistent, whether in the data books or just in the plain series itself. So it should be pretty clear at this point that Kakashi is just getting massively stronger throughout part 1.
Yeah.
And moving on to the Sannin fight, because this is kind of interesting. So we actually have Kabuto and Orochimaru without arms and jutsu. I feel like I have to bring in the jutsu point, because like somebody brought up to me the other day that like he could use his arms in part 2, so he had jutsu, which is just wrong. So he still doesn't have his jutsu. In which case, like, actually Jiraiya is the one to assess that Kabuto's at the same level of Kakashi. And you might be inferring, right, that like, let's say you don't think Jiraiya knows all Kakashi's capabilities. That wouldn't matter, because Orochimaru makes the actual same statement on Kabuto. So it's pretty clear we have someone who's seen Kakashi, like with his Raikiri, you know, a decent bit of his power. He thinks Kabuto's on that level, and then Jiraiya the same way, who's like hung around Kakashi and like the Akatsuki tier, also thinks Kabuto's on that level. So generally Kabuto would just scale to a much stronger Kakashi, but he also displays some very impressive feats. I'm gonna let Gian take that over in terms of what he's actually able to do versus Tsunade.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment one more thing real quick on that previous point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So basically, Jiraiya is actually like well knowledgeable about what Kabuto's capable of. He was actually like at the battlefield while Kabuto was like taking on Tsunade, and he watches Kabuto tag Tsunade multiple times and then like splatter blood all over her. And then Naruto comes out and like you know, tries to hit him with some shadow clones, and Kabuto proceeds to like body all of them, and that's what warrants Jiraiya's statement. So I think that just like on the knowledge part of this, Jiraiya should be knowledgeable enough to assert this.
Yeah.
And so then, like,
yeah, that would add on to it with like Orochimaru and Jiraiya both like pretty much seeing Kabuto's capabilities, like inferring he's above Kakashi. So continue.
Yeah, and then continuing on with like the fight with Tsunade, we see like right at the start, Tsunade like betrays Orochimaru or whatever, and like jumps down and tries to kick the ground by Kabuto and Orochimaru, and in base Kabuto just jumps out of the way, like low difficulty. And then we get like to the battlefield. Kabuto states this, and then he takes the chakra pill, tags Tsunade multiple times with his little basically like his chakra scalpel, and like disables parts of Tsunade's body and splatters blood, and then punches her multiple times. And this warrants a statement from Tsunade. Basically, Tsunade's like, in referring to medical ninjutsu, Kabuto's strength and senses surpass her. I state that because I don't really want this to like to make people think that Kabuto scales to prime Tsunade in all of his stats, because that's just blatantly not true.
That's just not the that's a very good point. I feel like we don't want people wanking him, because that's just not the case. Like Kabuto's impressive, but not that impressive. So continuing on with that.
Yeah. So basically, this scaling, this Sannin scaling is like very prevalent for Kabuto. I think that this just scales him above Zabuza, just using like common knowledge. Like at this point, Kabuto's referred to as a threat. You know, he's like boxing the Sannin all at once, and Zabuza could barely hang with a like weakened Kakashi. So I think that's part of the narrative argument there. Like Kabuto realistically like just kind of dog washes Zabuza.
Yeah, and on the narrative point, it's just like also when you look at Kabuto and how he's talked about a lot more threatening in a lot more of a threat manner than like Zabuza ever was. Like you never really see people like talking about Zabuza as a threat, or even Kakashi does it. And if like Zabuza really was that strong, they would probably like mention him more afterwards, but they don't because he's dead. So there you go on that. But Kabuto's like consistently talked about like this guy's no joke. Like he's on another level. Like you are not, you know, we see it from Kakashi in his own assessment, even like the Sannin, who also have a good assessment of Kakashi's ability. So overall, Kabuto just has he pretty much just scales to a stronger Kakashi. It's pretty simple actually. He just scales to a stronger Kakashi. Now, obviously we don't want to say that like speed blitz GG, like, because that is generally the case, but we also want to talk about their abilities, because that is a important factor in like Naruto battles. A lot of people will sometimes skim over that, but I actually do think it's like kind of important to discuss. So there's always the topic of like, for example, like what would Kabuto do against like Zabuza's Demon Mist? What would you say to that game?
Yeah, I'd say that in a similar fashion to Kakashi does to Zabuza, that's probably about what Kabuto would do. We've seen him like play out of tricky situations before when he had his limbs all rearranged. He's like very intelligent, even like on the same or surpassing Kakashi in intelligence. Yes. So I think he'd just be capable of easily playing around the Demon Mist. And since his stats should also be higher, referring to previous scaling, it wouldn't be hard for him to dispatch of Zabuza in this situation.
Yeah, pretty much like it's pretty safe to assume Kakashi just has higher intelligence, better combat sense than Zabuza, in which case Kabuto's relative rivaling, me and Gian kind of lean towards, being above, just because it's kind of shown he's like outplaying Kakashi in a manner in which Kakashi thought he outplayed Kabuto. So it would be safe to assume Kabuto's just kind of on that level in terms of all his stats. in terms of intelligence, and especially with the fact that as soon as like he knocks out one of like Zabuza's limbs, it's kind of over. And it's just kind of crazy. Even going back to his intelligence, he had all of his like ligaments rearranged, and within seconds he's able to like figure out like all of his capabilities and how to actually fight again. So it's almost like insane, like the intelligence feats Kabuto has. So to say he's on the level of Kakashi would just not be a stretch in any regard.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's it from general scaling to like the intelligence to the abilities. I mean, maybe the water clones wouldn't do anything because they're only a 10th of Zabuza's strength, so those wouldn't be relevant. He would speed blitz before any water style. Is there really anything you wanted to add? Is there really anything else for like the Zabuza side that you can think of, or you think we covered?
Yeah, for Zabuza, I'd say that like it goes off the presupposition that Kakashi gets no stronger throughout part 1. You kind of have to assert the fact that Zabuza is weakened and that Kakashi's at full strength, which you already kind of countered.
Yeah.
So I think that the scaling for Zabuza is like a bit assumption based, really.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I really wanted to comment on was like the chakra pill, because I think that's quite interesting.
Yes, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I think most people when seeing this try to like assert the fact that Kabuto when taking this is like much stronger than he would be, or try to like assert the fact that before he takes the chakra pill he gets blitzed or something of the sort. But we know that in character Kabuto just takes the chakra pill as soon as he sees a strong opponent. So I just assert the fact that he'd do the same against Zabuza. And for the food pill, right, it's just stated by Choji that it like gives them higher stamina, they can fight for 3 days. And then Asuma goes on to say that like basically that Kiba's chakra is like double when he takes this pill. So people try to assert the fact that this automatically amps Kabuto's stats, which really isn't the case. Your chakra should be more correlative to your stamina, which Choji already comments on, which kind of supports that. Or it would just simply give Kabuto an ability to amp his stats a little bit more. And basically that just like doesn't imply that he's just flat out stronger when taking this pill. He has to like do stuff with his chakra.
Yes. He has to like, for example, an interesting point I can bring up for people is that people, a common, I don't want to say misconception, but like people will pretty much throw out the fact that more chakra equals more speed, which we kind of talked about a little bit, but like that's like they'll use, for example, them gaining like a Jubi buff or something like that, like to kind of talk about it. Which I mean, you couldn't if that's the case, but for example, we actually know, for example, in like the Itachi Shinen novel, that they actually have to focus their chakra at their feet. In turn, like it's talked about being a feet flicker, in which they actually like gain speed from that. So it in turn like gives him more chakra to like focus towards different avenues, which the stamina point would all come back to that. And in terms of the food pill, I feel like also a good point is that you brought up is that it's a bit of an assumption. They're pretty much like kind of equating Kiba's food pill to Kabuto's, which I mean, you could do. It's just, you know, at the end of the day, it is an assumption. We don't really know like the limits of Kabuto's food pill, just that he's recovering blood and I guess in turn stamina from that point. So it's very, you know, that's more of a contentious topic, but even the food pill point isn't really necessary to definitively prove that like Kabuto should just be massively above Zabuza at this point.
Yes, sir.
Was there I think we covered it. I think we got everything. Anything else
yeah, I think that's everything.
All right, guys, thank you for watching. Oh, this video went on for 19 minutes. Solid. Yo, I know you're still here. Hit that like and subscribe button because this was a solid video. Thank you for Gian for coming on to the channel. Let me know thank you for coming on, and let me know if you guys would actually like to see this more, like me getting some popular Discord debaters on the channel, because I think that'd be a cool little mini series, because like I like to surround myself with, you know, the best, you know. So yeah, let me just stroke you. All right.
I appreciate you having me, man. It was fun.
All right, you want to close the video? I'm gonna let you close the video, bro.
Yeah, so in conclusion, Kabuto kind of mopped Zabuza in part 1, and just via scaling and overall hacks. I think that's it. That's the end of the debate, really.
All right, you heard it here first, guys. Whoa. I'll talk to you guys later. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.